By the way, Monty, I know you want to do like the vitality topics. Let's just do that now.
Yeah. I'm really interested in your take on this, just because there's been so much hype around Vitality coming into this split, and I think for me, your game against Vitality was very telling about both of your teams and the current state of who is good in LEC right now. And as much excitement as there has been around Vitality, it seems like their solo lanes, Leader and SLT, are still very behind when it comes to knowing where to be on the map at a given time. And that was exposed very obviously in your game that you played as Misfits against them, because they were reacting very weirdly to a lot of your like lane pressure, teleports, jungle invades. You guys were ahead in the early game and closed the game out very easily, but at the same time, it's hard for me not to get excited about Vitality because you can really see the upside there, right? Like the individual ability, the style of game that they play is super exciting. It just doesn't feel like Selfmade has a lot of support. And I tweeted out, like, I was surprised that the choice was SLT, because for me, Soaz would be an obvious player from a GM perspective that you would want in this team to kind of stabilize a lot of the aggression and have that veteran voice and veteran presence around some players that demand a lot of resources and also may not have the best kind of shot calling within the game. And his level of consistency would be pretty amazing, I think, in this roster.
I think, that logic makes a lot of sense. I think they follow the same scouting or team building, plan now that, as I said a bit earlier, a lot of teams do, where you look much more at just like pure mechanics, exactly, as much as you can when you try and
maybe
sign
solo queue rank and things.
All stuff like that. And what kind of champ pool do they have from ERL? Is it Maokai every game? On a really strong team and they win that way? Or is it like, a lot of carry picks? Does his ERL team play around him? Is he able to use that to win games and like snowball and so on? And I think they follow that same, because like the entire lineup literally is just built around mechanics. Labrov is... Sure.
But that's my point. That's my point, Martin. Is but then you need a balance to that.
I think their philosophy, which I can follow, and I think the philosophy of the players on the team who is part of building the roster as well, like, let's be real here, players have big say and big impact on roster building, was, again, in the same style like that they're playing in. Is like, we want a top laner who they believe can become someone who can play all the different carries, who can win his lane hard, who potentially with resources or whatever can do a lot. Their issue they're going to have, obviously, in summer is, I think, the Selfmade investment, because he's only signed for this split.
Yes.
The Selfmade investment screams, win now. We must win now. The SLT investment does not scream, we must win now. That screams, he also, we're taking a gamble.
He also was the biggest problem for them in the game that they played against you.
Well, I feel bad for him, because his role in a team of Leader, Selfmade, who will always prioritize mid lane, and Labrov support, who is one of the best individual supports in all of the West, who naturally plays to win lane hard with a fairly aggressive AD carry and Crown Shot, who is very vocal as well in the game.
Yes.
And naturally, when you have very vocal players, they tend to call for more opportunities that you then as a team end up listening and looking towards than maybe I could imagine a less vocal rookie top laner. So what happened in our game was like, so he's playing against Renekton and he has a TP bot early, most likely due to a team call saying TP, like we can do something here.
It's because you guys were playing properly around your lane pressure and invaded onto Selfmade, and Selfmade
and then they
called for the TP.
Exactly. And then his lane is completely screwed now. He then gets dove right after, because obviously Vander is just like, guys, like, look at this guy. He's already behind. We can just dive him. Let's go top VTO. And VTO's like, yeah, let's go. And then they go kill him. Then a follow-up game from Razork where we kill him again. And he gets obviously no help, because at that point he's too far behind. They're never going to win 2v2. They're never going to win 3v3. And it's just really, really hard. So I think that's going to be Vitality's biggest challenge, is how do you make him have an impact for what you actually signed him for insanely quickly, so that you have a top laner you can also utilize, on a team who is naturally gonna demand bot lane, mid lane focus.
Exactly. It's
Pretty
what I'm
much
saying.
90% of the time. So the logic you're having makes a lot of sense.
They seem overburdened when it comes to their resource allocation. Like, you know that Crown Shot on SK was used to getting 100% of the resources, right? And he's a great player. He can carry. Leader's a player who is very flashy and wants to have a lot of punch in the game. And I would just much rather see a Soaz or a Kovacevicd in the top lane rather than a carry top lane rookie. Now, I think they could go a different direction. They could say, maybe we want more of a weak side rookie to kind of be subservient and
they
take
just don't really
role.
Exist anymore.
That's
they're almost
fair.
Impossible to find. If you look at all the dominant top laners at the moment on the top EOL teams, like, they're all playing super hard. Like, Orome would maybe be kind of the person you could think about there from Excel, but Excel have zero reason to sell him right now to Vitality. So, because I imagine they can look at Orome as a potential long-term solution on their side as well. So they might not have had other options if they were looking on the rookie route. Because most of the players right now that are rising up the ranks in ERLs are in the very same kind of style of what their main skill set is, at least from a rookie perspective. But yeah, he's tough because he needs to win now. Like, SLT literally needs right now to learn everything he needs to learn to fit into this team, because again, the investments they made are screaming, we need to win in summer. And they went 10th, 9th, and 10th in the last 3 splits. So it obviously makes sense why they want to try and go all in.
I think it's really hard for Vitality as well, because what people won't know is that they were trying to throw money around this last offseason. So at the end of 2020, they tried to go big. They're not short on cash, guys. They
had tickets in the Perks lottery, put it that way.
Yes. Yeah. So they
would have gone super team if they'd have gotten him, by the way. That goes without saying. That was the plan, as far as I know.
Right. And you have to look at the way they're spending in other games. Like, they signed Zywoo and Counter-Strike to like a 3-year deal. So they're certainly willing to...
deal.
What?
5-year deal.
Oh, 5-year deal. Excuse me.
Yeah, well, maybe they extended it 3 or something. It might be that. They also, by the way, literally paid for like a veteran player in ochs, like something like $300,000 at the end of like 2019. So they spend money. People don't know this. This is actually one of the factors. Same with Misfits. Like, people in leagues still look in the server. And so, for example, that's why they overestimated where Origin's spending power was. They thought, look at these players, and they're one of the top teams. Like, mate, the idea they were even contention for the spring splits, like, of the first season, that's fucking insane. Then you go in these teams. Actually, it's actually, to me, a bit appalling when a team like Vitality can be last place. Like, what the fuck? You have money to spend. Like, that's it. You just don't have the right coach to get it, the right person to get buy-in from the players. People don't want to join your team, maybe. Like, there's other factors at play sometimes.
I think what Martin said earlier was very telling, in that I think what they suffered from was if you cannot land the core player that's like the magnet that attracts the rest of the players to your roster, because it really is a game of dominoes where the right domino has to fall and then the rest of them go. In terms of GMing, it's more like GMing in the NBA, right? It's the same concept where you attract the star player, and then like suddenly there's like 3 star players on your team. And I think it wasn't from Vitality's lack of effort, because they put a lot of effort into trying to buy some good players. It didn't happen, and they got lucky in a way where they kind of like got Crown Shot, which I think was a key piece for them. In order to now affect these kind of bigger changes. They were fortunate. They're kind of waiting for Fnatic to blow up. There is kind of a sense of a changing in the guard of LEC, where the G2 and Fnatic especially Fnatic are no longer dominant. They're certainly flailing right now. And so it's opened up opportunities for these other players to go to rosters or teams that they may not have considered previously, which has benefited you, and it's also benefited Vitality, and I think will continue to do so. But I agree. I think it's not throwing shade at SLT, because I think we've only seen a few games. We don't know what his upside is going to be. I just find it very confusing from a GM perspective as to why you would make that decision when otherwise everything else is so good. And there's still time. Maybe they will sign, a player. Maybe I don't think K Corp's going to give up Kovacevicd, unfortunately for them.
He would be expensive.
He would be expensive.
Buyouts are not cheap,
and especially because here's the other thing that we need to consider is that Schalke has basically announced that they're going to be selling their roster, and so if you had to pick a front runner for if they have the funds certainly Riot would probably be very amenable to K-Corp with their massive fan base that has been powering like the amateur French scene to come in and bring a lot of that audience over into LEC. So
they're a super strong organization to get in, 100%.
Yeah, I mean, it's
100%.
gonna. I don't know what their resources are like, but you would believe that with their fan base, they would be able to get some investors on board who could potentially buy that slot. And then, clearly, I think their plan would be to transition Kovacevicd into that slot.
I mean, they would probably keep the lineup they have right now, which functions really well. They are, the strongest ERL team, and they won EU Masters as well just before and 3-0'd us in the French final as well. But it is like with players in offseason, like. Generally, there are like 4 reasons or 4 priorities they have when you talk to them. Like obviously, money is one. The organization is another one. Then there's the roster, and then desperation can be there as well in case you have no other offers. But that one has kind of died out in Europe because going to a top ERL team is actually considered sometimes a better move than going to a bottom LEC team. Yes. Much higher chance that you can look great for a year, and then you will get offered a nice contract to get back into the LEC. So the whole roster shuffling in and out.
Of being in the last team, basically, because they think that you basically get leaded. You just get, kick him out. He's not good. Yeah.
I mean, there's a high chance that you can look worse than you are, obviously.
For sure.
And there's a great chance you can look really good in the Euros. Like take Aroma again as a really great example. Like I think he completely changed his reputation and his name in the last EU Masters, where he had an amazing performance, where before that, what a lot of people remembered was him getting removed from Mad Lions, obviously after Worlds. And I think what we're seeing there is, first of all, top ERL teams are paying good salaries. Like they're not paying, €1,000 a month and you can barely live on that. Like they are paying very competitive salaries, like they can range, from, 3 to 7, 8K or whatever.
Sure, especially if it's like the French league and the ones that are the big ones as well. Yeah, for sure.
Exactly, like depending on who it is and so on, and which organization it is. So it is a very viable career path to take that step down. So that desperation one is kind of gone. And now the trick really is, if like when you talk to players, you will very quickly learn what is the number one prior. Is it the org they're joining? In most cases, it's not. Is it the money they're getting, or is it the roster you have? And in like 9 out of 10 cases in Europe, roster is always the main conversation with that player.
Makes sense.
And then they sometimes have that NA backup option of the money prior that they can take, but they go very aggressively into the offseason with an agent or without an agent, and they try and like really look at rosters. They look at other players who are free agents. They talk to each other, obviously, as players, and see where other people are going. And they use that a lot in conversation, which is why it's so important for a team to find 1 or 2 names that grow quickly and that other players really want to play with, because it gives you so much more power in an off season. And that's what the Mad Lions and Rogue model really has been over the last couple of years, where they came in with rookie teams with the kind of core they have now, and then they were very aggressive in the off seasons of keeping the centerpieces and extending them as long as they can and spend the money there, and then use those centerpieces to look for upgrades where they felt there were upgrades available, like Odo Amne coming into Rogue now. Like Odo Amne is joining Rogue because he looks at that lineup as his main prior and he goes, this is really my ticket to Worlds, potentially an LEC title. Yes. And that model is why you can go for that investment into rookies. You can gamble a year or a split at least. As long as you scout properly, you should still be competitive by summer for playoffs. And then play aggressive in the next offseason with your centerpieces, Larsen inspired on Rogue, gave them Hansama the next offseason, and then the next one, Odo Amne Trimpy. Boom, here you have your lineup now. Vander before obviously was also a strong piece. And then Mad Lions have done the same. Humanoid, Carsey, and Kaiser are now the core that they could use to then pull in, whichever names. Like El Yoya was pretty much a done deal before I'd even joined Misfits, because he knew I want to play in this team, 100%. And obviously he's been a huge asset for them.
Great,
massive investment for them. Yeah, that's part of the off-season puzzle as well. That it's always hard to guess which players are now looking to play with each other as part of when you're trying to build your roster. Because I guess it's a good thing in Europe. Money isn't everything, and I consider that a part of why we probably have a much healthier ecosystem at the moment compared to North America.
I mean, if people don't know, it was basically the same thing with Limit. I mean, he even said it himself. Basically, he actually got a higher offer, supposedly, from SK, but he didn't know what the roster was going to be, and he had no clue it was going to be all rookies and stuff. So instead, he went to Schalke, the team that had obviously done that miracle run. Like, he's going to fit right in really nicely there. Players were starting to percolate. Abadagi, a bunch of good players. So, yeah, I can see why it does seem to check out, like, a bunch of players. Selfmade just left Fnatic. He did that because he thought, I want to play a leader, I want to play in this other team. So, yeah, it's interesting because we've sort of gone full circle now. That's what Europe used to be. It used to be about you just want to join the sickest roster.
I mean, actually, yeah, it used to be a lot of that. And it used to be, if you joined the sickest roster, you could pull other players with you, famously Perks, GM of the century, with all the work he did in G2. Like, that would not have happened as effectively and as fast as it did without Perks. Because like they had one split where him and Trick are like the MVP and the rookie. Yeah. And instantly every player in Europe is like, I want to play with those two guys. And then they could pull the trigger and they could get in Sven, Mithy and so on. And then they made that lineup that won for like a year and a half. And that really started the G2 snowball in a lot of ways that then Carlos and the brand obviously did a great job of running with. So that was a really good example of, again, also a little bit of that rogue Mad Lions case we're seeing right now, which is a very good model to have.
That's like Perks got some money from one business, and then, I'm going to make up a random year here. Then in, like 2002, he invested into like Google stock when he first heard about it. Then he took his money from that when it went up and he made Amazon stock. It's like, fucking hell, mate. What's this parlay? This is ridiculous. But you're right. It all starts in one player. Like, that meme everyone's doing right now with the big domino pieces. And it's like at the end, you have like, like fucking Perks is the greatest player of all time, or whatever. Yeah. The first domino is just like, he wins like the first split with a slightly dodgy team when like the league was a bit of parity, and then it's everything just comes from there. If that first thing doesn't happen, the rest doesn't happen either.
Yeah, I mean, Caps left Fnatic after Fnatic had just won 2 splits to go to G2. That doesn't make any sense.
No, it doesn't.
Unless he's looking at what G2 is having on their roster and he's like, that's better than what I have here, and I want to go there and play with that. Otherwise, he technically took a step down from a pure results.
By the way, another GM move of the century. Fuck, the problem is our rival team has got the only player that's better than me. Unless. That's fucking genius, mate. That's genius. That's genius.
Well, G2 always been aggressive on the market, which is a very good thing for G2.
Want to see more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, be a pleb and don't.